This is Chapter 5 of The God Boy by Ian Cross. After Dad had gone back home that morning, leaving me to go on by myself, I went on to school, of course, and it was one of my funny days there. I can't complain, I suppose, because I was very clever and generally top of my class, so I could afford to go funny. Not that I ever did it deliberately. I wouldn't even know it had happened till school started, and I would try to pay attention, only to find my brain going off in all directions at once. Honestly, those times it was hard for me to think of what two and two might be. That day I looked around the class with a feeling they were all strangers, or at least that I was a stranger to them. Even Joe Waters, in many ways, was my best friend, and he looked strange at the next desk, with his hair sticking up like a hedgehog, and his ears sticking out, and that grin on his face that was even there when he was serious. His teeth were so prominent. Even Joe, with all those features, looked so strange that when I realized that I knew his name, it was an enormous relief to me, as it would be terrible fix to forget names of people you know. There was Joseph Kane, the fat boy, Hector Simpson, whose father used to play representative football, Sniffy Peters, and Legs Hope, all my friends, and yet I hardly knew them. We sat there in our rooms, separated by a folding door from the younger kids. Our school was really one big hall, partitioned off by these doors. We were in the top classes, standard 5 and 6, and I, even though I was 11 and in standard 5, was just as smart as some of the chaps in standard 6. So I came in for some attention. You can see these funny periods could be awkward for me, and I used to have to pretend not to be feeling well. Once I told Sister the truth, that my brain wasn't functioning properly when she asked me a question, and she thought I was making a fool of her. So after that, when I got stuck, I always said I was ill and moped over my desk, sniffing and rubbing my head as though I was sick as a dog. Even the room was strange, with its holy pictures on the walls, the 2 blackboards on their easels up front, the big fireplace on the side, and the mantelpiece, which Sister Angela always had decked with flowers to commemorate some saint, as often as not St. Francis. I had to look around, study the views out the window on each side wall, as well as everything inside, to try to get myself in sight. Outside the right window was the playground, and you could see part of the town in the distance. On the other side was a small hill, neatly covered by pine trees. A good place for games. But if I stared my thinking, all I could see were Dad and Mum back home fighting over the bike I wanted. So I gave up, and I just let my mind wander. In my mind, I went for a fight in an aeroplane and looked down on Raggleton from high up. I had a pilot, of course, a man in leather jacket and goggles, and he swooped the plane down low over the beach, and everybody I knew was down there waving up at us. And I just had got to the part where the pilot was turning to me and saying, "You've got flying in your blood. I can see that. Would you like to take over the controls?" When I felt a hard prod on my shoulders, and looking up, I saw Sister Angela standing over me. "Will you give me the answer, please, Jimmy?" I said, "I didn't hear the question properly, Sister." "I know you didn't, dreamer. I'm teaching history. Leave your dreaming till after school." The rest of the class tittered away, and I felt a darn fool. I did my best to follow lessons the rest of the morning, and, in case I was caught again, I started to try and look as though I was sick. In the lunch hour, we played 7-a-side football, and I kicked a field goal. It was a better kick than Joe Waters, who was really the best kick in the whole school, had made for weeks, and during the afternoon, I thought of myself as a great footballer, really setting games on fire and tearing the opposition into shredded wheat. Even though I was only a kid, I was picked to represent the country in an international match, and my photograph was in the papers, and all the kids in school got seats in the grandstand to watch me play, and my mother and father were so pleased they came to watch me. I was so wrapped up in this dream that when I did hear Sister Angela, I thought she was calling me from the grandstand. "Jimmy, will you stand up and tell the class what I've been talking about?" I stood up and looked at her. "You haven't been listening, have you?" "No, Sister." She sighed and looked down at the desk and closed her eyes. She was saying a short prayer. She always did before she strapped anybody. "Come out here, Jimmy." I went out, feeling somehow pleased with what was going to happen. I was being looked at by everybody. Even Jesus, with his bleeding heart, seemed to be looking, and the windows on the side walls, they were not looking out. They were looking in at me. Honestly, I got as much a kick out of it as Jesus did at the crucifixion. Sister had taken the single black strap, split in two at the end from the drawer of her desk, and was looking at me. Anybody could see that she was soft and didn't like what she was going to do. "You must pay attention, Jimmy," she said. "Yes, sister." "Hold out your hand." By holding your hand high, you could cut off a lot of the force of the strap, but I held my hand low. She swung the strap over her shoulder and slapped it down hard. My hand stung and felt as though it was scorched. She hit me once more and then dropped her arm, the strap dangling in her grip. I kept my hand out and said to her in my mind, "Go on, hit me again, go on." She could have gone on hitting me till kingdom come, and I would still be holding out my hand when she stopped. That's the way I felt. "That's all, Jimmy," she said. She was puffing slightly, and anybody could see she was soft. "Thank you, sister," I said loudly, and walked back to my desk, holding my hand at my side as though it didn't hurt, and winking to the class. Once the class started again, I nursed the hand in my lap and blew it on a few times when nobody was looking.